What up, everybody? Sobro Troy here with my best man, Sobro Bobby. He's going to be asking me some hardcore questions about my recovery. Yo.
So Troy, considering everything that's going on, how do you feel?
Excellent. I mean, I feel more like myself, especially after the relapse. I beat myself up immensely at the beginning, but, with the counseling and CBH and stuff, I feel like I found myself again, for sure.
We've spoken about this before, we don't really get into this beating ourselves up, but just our adrenaline wounds, we're our own worst.
Yeah, we're all worse enemy.
Okay, yeah. So now that you're going through the treatment and stuff, do you feel anything has changed? Do you feel a little new outlook on stuff?
Yeah, I definitely have a new outlook. I feel more whole, but the outlook, I saw the flaws that I made, the errors in my ways, and working with them here, I was able to recognize patterns that I didn't even realize were there. It stems from my childhood. I had to take on an early parenting role, looking after my siblings and stuff, and that caused a lot of stress on my end. And one of my ways to rebel after facing many traumas was using. I felt like that was the one thing I could control in my life. But in the end, obviously, the substance controls you. But yeah, so that pattern right there sort of like got to me. And I recognized, that maybe I was facing a burnout and, stressed. And I was putting myself in bad places, and it's not a good thing to do.
No, 100% right. Sorry, I got a really talk, but try. You guys can pause in every sec. Oh, thank you. Yeah, money on you. Okay.
You know what?
Oh, I was like, yeah, but he's going at the end for the blooper. Like,
Special content on YouTube
for the like bloopers. And they put bloopers over there. Game face up, take that out. So, do you feel that you've learned, at least refreshed your tools?
Oh yeah, no. The way I pictured it is, I was armored already, and pretty well armed, but there were still chinks in it, weak spots, and I feel like I was able to fine tune where those weaknesses were and work out the kinks. I mean, Gary, who's a facilitator here, he's one of my favorites. He helps immensely, and Elizabeth too. I mean, I love them all, but I feel like those two understood me the most, and it took a lot of time to focus on me, and that was, probably one of the key things that helped this time around for sure.
Well, yeah, I always think like keeping it tune up is good. It's just like a car, you got to tune it up. Same thing like bucks. For the example, I was saying earlier, one day I was ready to call quits. I was done, but I did catch myself that I stopped doing a lot of the things that helped me get to where I am.
Yeah.
I stopped writing. I stopped reaching out to people. I stopped going to meetings. Mm-hmm. Not that I'm saying I thought I had it under control, but I didn't think I needed it at the time.
Yeah.
Till it built up to the top, then I couldn't take.
And I think that was probably one of my problems. Like I stopped going to meetings. I was focused more on like my personal lives, people around me that, I felt like needed me around all the time. So like when I go back, as soon as I land to Logan, I'm going straight to the sober living where I was before, the wheelhouse. And we made like mandatory things. Like I'm going to do IOP. That's a mandatory to stay there now. I'm going to do like 60-day restriction as opposed to a 30-day. So that's 60 meetings. So, I mean, I might as well do the 90 meetings, yeah.
At least do it for yourself.
Yeah.
You have the first 16 and then continue doing it as a personal challenge yourself. And this way, and if you don't, you don't make it so that you already accomplished your goal of 6.
Yeah.
And everything else is just a check.
Yeah. And on the 4th, it's my 30-day on the 4th, since I got the reset. So I'm proud of that. I'm going to get back to where I was at and further.
We said it's not losing, it's just a bump in the road, because in reality, you didn't lose all that.
Oh, yeah. No.
You might have restarted your date, but in reality, it's not.
Yeah.
You didn't lose the experience, but you learned from it.
Yeah.
Like I said, when Victor asked me to come, I came from one or two reasons. One, I thought I needed to get my Troy recently, to boost on my ego. And two, I want to remind myself that I don't want to be back here.
Yeah.
You know, well, not I've never physically been.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't want to. If I fuck up, if I mess up, I'm gonna end up back in place.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So I think by becoming here, it's also kind of like, you know, when your child's young and going crazy, like you put them on the go visit jail, you know, going before, like, this is where you're gonna end up. So that's kind of what I wanted.
Yeah.
Is to smack you back into reality and be able to, this is where you're gonna end up. I'm gonna go do what you learn.
Absolutely. And it's actually a smart way to do it.
Exactly. You know, so now that you feel that you refreshing your tools, so you like you mentioned before, I feel the same way. You already built up, you already had the armor, you just kind of had to repolish them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, put them out there, repolish them. So now, is there anything that you learned from the first time to this time that you're like, hey, you know what? I didn't see it that way.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, boundaries was a big thing. You know, like literally, I the first time I can identify unhealthy, the healthy boundaries, but I don't think I necessarily practiced them. You know, and that was a huge deal. I've already worked on my communication assertiveness while being open to people's opinions and stuff. But I also feel like with phone calls that I made and stuff, with the limited phone calls that I made, I've already established boundaries that I necessarily wouldn't have done the first time. You know, I'm like, hey, listen, I gotta do it this way. You know, this is how it's gotta be. You gotta think of me because that's what I gotta do personally. And you know, they just drilled in my head. This is about you. You cannot, you know, give someone a drink from your cup if you haven't filled it for yourself first, you know. Or if you're in a plane, you're supposed to put the mask on yourself first before helping the person next to you, you know. So that was drilled into me, and I feel like, you know, I didn't necessarily think of it that way the first time. So that was a big deal for me.
All right, so at least now that you learned that. And one thing that I always said, and I told plenty of stuff, recovery is a selfish thing. Recovery is something that should be selfish.
Oh yeah,
you should put yourself first before anybody. You know, in certain things,
yeah.
Obviously, it's moderation. But if you do well, everyone else behind that really cares about you does well. So, right? Yeah. So that's just the way it works. So I'm glad that you were able to realize that, you know, you weren't setting your boundaries, and now you realize, hey, you know what, I have to put myself first.
Yep.
So that's also a very good stepping stone. You know, you realize, hey, you know what, I need to set my boundaries, and I have to not only respect myself, but if I don't, how are other people going to do it for me, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. You don't respect yourself, inevitably other people are going to be like, oh, why should I respect?
Yeah, it was just get walked on. You know, so
like I said, I am glad that you were able to realize that from the first time to this time that there's stuff that you didn't pick up. Correct.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I may have learned it, but I this time around it was more being taught how to practice it appropriately.
Hey, you kind of practice. You broke it down. You broke it down into little portions, and you absorbed it little by little.
Yeah.
And it's also easier to learn that way, right? You're not getting bombarded on you, throwing things on you. You're like, all right, you take a little subject, you break it down, and then you learn how to use it on the outside.
Yeah.
Which is good. Like you were mentioning with boundaries, there's no point in knowing that you know, setting boundaries if you're gonna let people walk all over you.
True.
And like I said, you know, recovery is a selfish game, and it's meant to be that.
Yeah.
You have to put yourself first, and unfortunately, before anybody.
Yeah.
You know, so at least that's good. I love your room much.
Yeah, thank you.
Like, I would not want to be outside. I'll be a buck outside.
Yeah.